Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Then check out Deal to Heal Teas. With our inspirational teas, you're sure to find something to inspire you. That's dealtohealteas.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.com. Again, that's dealtohealteas.com. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you enjoy the Girl Dad Discussion podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James, and I believe the relationship between a daughter and her father is one of the most important relationships a young lady can have. And therefore, my mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by sharing the voices of girl dads to the world. So check out our podcast on every platform where podcasts can be listened to. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel. Again, that's the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with your host, Ernest James. Hey guys, this is Ernest James, host of the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. And I got a question to ask you. Could you buy me a cheeseburger? Better yet, could you buy me a value meal? Yes? Well, guess what? I don't need a value meal. However, for the cost of a value meal, you can support this podcast to keep us on the air. Just go to Patreon/Deal to Heal podcast and choose any one of the 3 tiers that's available. And if you just want to make a one-time donation, go to Cash App and make a donation to $eJames, the number 418. Make a one-time donation to the Cash App, or again, go to Patreon to support this podcast and keep us on the air. Thanks in advance. Be blessed. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Ernest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and to all of your podcast listening platforms that you subscribe to the podcast on all of your podcast listening platforms. Also, check out our partner podcast, the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, where I'm also is the host. And we also share the same YouTube channel. So when you go to YouTube, look up the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. And when you pull this up, you will see the playlist for the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, but also the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. That is a podcast where I have conversation with other girl dads like myself and even some daughters to talk about the relationship of the girl and the girl dad relationship. So make sure you guys are checking that out. Also, make sure that you guys, I'm going to tell you guys how you can win $100 from the podcast, but you have to stay until the end of the podcast in order to get that information. So make sure you guys are staying to the end of the podcast to learn how you can win $100 from the podcast. All right. So today, just like any other day, we are blessed with the guest. Miss Anderson, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. First of all, let me say thank you for being on. You could be doing anything else with anyone else, but you're here with me and my listeners, and I definitely appreciate it. So I want you to know that up front. So do me a favor to get us started. Introduce yourself to my audience and let us know who you are and a little bit about what it is that you do.
Sure. My name is Miiko Anderson. I am a newly retired senior prosecutor. I spent a lot of time as a prosecutor prosecuting human trafficking, sexual assault, domestic violence, and gang violent related crimes. I am a mom of two adult kids, and two grandkids now. Just had a newest addition. I am the president of our Black Lawyers Association in Central California. That's a very newly formed organization, and we're just in our infancy stages, but we are formed and ready to do a lot of work. I am the vice president of a wonderful survivor centered nonprofit organization that focuses on providing comprehensive services to human trafficking survivors. I am an adjunct professor at the law school where I teach a course that I developed on human trafficking law and policy. I am an attorney advisor, so that means I go around and I train prosecutors and law enforcement on how to investigate and prosecute gender-based violent crimes. I do that all over the country and internationally as well. And that's it. Well, I guess one of the biggest accolades though that I have that I'm probably the most proud of is that recently in April 2023, I won the Congressional Award or was selected as an awardee of a congressional award for the work that I do with victims of crime and survivors of crime.
Oh wow. Oh wow. That definitely is a mouthful. So well, I don't think I've ever had anyone on here that dealt directly with um, sex trafficking and sex trafficking crimes. So let's go back a little bit even before we get in there. How what was the thing that even made you want to go into that field, or was it just like you were going and it was like, well, let me go this way?
You mean as far as sex trafficking or as far as prosecution?
Well, both. We can go with both. With prosecution first, but then more importantly, sex trafficking, because that's to me. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but to me, that's not something that I've ran into with people who've actually involved themselves in that work.
Yeah. So if we start back for uh, to talk about what made me want to become a prosecutor, I think it had to do mostly with my time in law school, and I did an internship at the DA's office in San Francisco, and I was sitting in a prelim, which is a hearing where they introduce evidence, and there was a victim testifying, and I realized that I did not want to be in a position that I felt was opposed to a victim. I don't think that necessarily that's what defense attorneys do. I don't think they oppose victims. I think they, you know, advocate for their client. But personally, I can tell that my connection was more in the area of what I felt was victim advocacy. And one of the reasons that I also felt it was really important, I had an experience early on, and I don't really share this a lot. But when I was in I grew up in Oakland, California, so it was a little rough in the 90s when I grew
Mhm.
up. High crime area, drugs were everywhere. It was typical what you think Oakland was. It was what it was in that time. And I remember I had this you got me out here telling stuff. But I had this date with somebody who I had just met at a corner store. I don't want to call it a liquor store because I wasn't buying liquor, but it was a corner store. And I was in there buying a pair of like stockings, right? Pantyhose stockings out of the corner store. And when I got to the register, this person had paid it for me and eventually asked me for my phone number. I gave it to him. We met where we were supposed to go out to the movies that Sunday, and I thought it would be safe because I knew him from around the neighborhood, and it was a daytime date, and it was Sundays in a public place. But I decided at the last minute to cancel that date, and he reacted in a way that was just completely unreasonable and out of control. And mind you, I had just met him to the point to where it was like I was not physically assaulted or anything like that, but it was like a really incredible experience where he like took some of my belongings and just reacted in a way that I didn't expect. So I made the report to the police to report it because crimes did occur, but it wasn't like a physical assault. And the response that I got from the police when I reported it made it seem as if I really was not valued as a person, that I was being judged for even speaking to somebody that I just met, not considering that I was being a victim. So it really bothered me that certain populations don't necessarily feel like they are incorporated in the criminal justice system. So one of the things that once I became a prosecutor that was really important to me, it was to make sure that everyone felt, especially victims and survivors, that they had the same fight for justice as everyone else. So those were kind of the two things that started me in the criminal justice field and then in prosecution.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I always, the reason why I ask that, because I always know that there's always something in our past that kind of sparks, and sometimes we don't even put the two and two together to later on, but there's always something in our past that makes that little spark that be like, all right, I remember it, but it doesn't, we sometimes we don't even think about it in the moment until later on when we're doing this great thing, and it's like, wait a minute, and then you can kind of remember back, because I share the story sometimes that, so I started a nonprofit organization called Ann Christine Charities some years ago in honor of my mom who passed away from cancer. And one of the things that we did was provide bereavement support in our communities, because we don't have it or we just don't use it, right? And so that's what I started doing. But it wasn't until now, mind you, I did this in my I probably was in my 30s, late 20s, 30s when I formed it. But what I remember was going all the way back to, I probably was 18 or 19. I remember going into the store. It's probably like 10 o'clock at night, me and my cousin, and these two guys come in. One is a larger African American guy, and one is a smaller guy. Both were grown men, older than I was at that time. But the big guy was crying, right, and the little guy was trying to console him, and we're in the store, and it just got to the point while he was there, we were in line. He wanted to get some cigarettes, and this guy is trying to, console him. And just by the conversation that they were having, I could tell that it was a female who had passed away. Whether mom, I don't know exactly what part she played in his life, but I can tell that it was a woman that had passed away. And so they're talking, and he's trying to console him, and then the big guy just turns around and hit the top of the counter with his fist, and it booms so loud in this little corner store that it's like, how in movies when everything gets quiet, it was like one of those moments, right? And he was like, I just want to get some cigarettes. And so everybody that was in front of him like moved out the way, like, hey, let this guy get some cigarettes. And so they got the cigarettes and they walked out, out of the store. I don't think I ever seen that guy before that, and probably never seen him after. But that stayed in the back of my mind. And just seeing how he was dealing with that and needed that support. Years fast forward, when I did the bereavement, when I started the bereavement non-for-profit doing the bereavement, that story came back to my mind. Like that incident came back. And so I always know that it's some things in our past that creates that spark. And sometimes we don't even recognize how much that simple incident may have affected us until years down the line when it starts to flourish again. And so that's why I asked that story, because I know it's always a backstory to some of the things that we do. But speaking of which, one of the things that you do, you started developed a program called the LEAD program, I think it's called. Um, uh, LEAD. I gotta make sure I get it right. The 4-step path to fearless leadership, if I'm not mistaken. So, could you tell us a little bit about that program?
Sure, absolutely. So it's really a 4-step process to help build leadership skills and build that routine. And it's based off of a lot of the things that I've gone through personally and things though that I have seen as a prosecutor. Because you can imagine, I've seen people really at their lowest points, whether it's been defendants who are facing really negative consequences for some actions, or if it's victims or survivors who have suffered a crime. And so some of the things that I tried to distill it down to a simple 4-point process that makes it easy to remember, but true and can be replicated in different situations. So for that, the L is for learn, and that really stands for kind of like learn your circumstances, learn what is going on in your life. A lot of times I think that we play things on automatic and don't take the time to really do a full and complete assessment. And one of the reasons why the assessment is so important is because we have to assess ourselves and have that level of accountability. And that to me has always been one of the ones that's most difficult, because it's either, assessing where we have shortcomings and things that we need to work on, or assessing the people that we have with us and around us who we may have to, face the hard facts that not everybody is for our next step. And so to really really do an assessment of the people, places, and things that are in your life and figure out what is working and what is not. So that is the very first step. The next is the E, and that's for empowerment. Because once you have that information, you got to do something with it. A lot of times we have that information and kind of sit back and don't take that next step, but find out whatever that is, right? So whether it's getting a counselor, whether it's financial management, whether it's really narrowing down your friend circle, whether it's not taking certain substances, if you have to stop drinking, whatever that is, find what you need to empower you to conquer what you have already identified as the issues that you're working on. I would like to say, though, the tricky part with assessment, to go back a little bit, is that it's real important to assess the weakness and identify the weakness, but not identify as the weakness. So doing that deep look, you got to be able to point it out, but don't identify with it. Know that it's something that you can change. Whatever that thing is, know that it's something that you can change. And that's where the empowerment stuff comes from. The next, though, is the A, and that's aspire, which simply means that you have to be able to dream big. I remember before I decided to go to law school, I forgot that I wanted to be a lawyer. I was so caught up in the day-to-day of raising two kids. I was a single parent. I was working for the phone company who did not let you be not 1 minute late back in the day. I think later they gave you like a 10-minute flex grace period. But when I was there during my era, if you were 1 minute late, you were late. It didn't matter. You had to plug in and log in at a certain amount of time. So all of those pressures really kind of stopped me or disconnected me from what it was that I truly wanted to be. So in order to really make that kind of like transformative change that you need to make, you have to connect with those aspirations, and they have to be big and they have to be clear, because they have to be big enough so that you are consistent with all the stuff that you do, and they have to be clear so you can kind of understand which way you're going. And then finally, the D is just for discipline. And I don't want to say just like it's nothing, but consistency is so key. You just have to be disciplined. And the challenge in that is being disciplined even when you don't see the result immediately, is being disciplined and dedicated to that process and not being connected so much to the result. So that's that 4-step lead process that really works well with leadership.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome. And I'm listening to those 4 steps, and it sounds to me a lot like they're all kind of intertwined with personal development, which I've been on my own journey of personal development over the last couple of years, and it's just been um, I won't say mind blowing, but not necessarily mind blowing, but just definitely mind opening, even to the things that I began to learn about myself. And so, in your own words, with professional and personal development, how important do you think that is to a person, and how important of a role does it even play in our day to day?
It plays such a huge role because we are all developing one way or another. And the thing is that you want to be in front of it and mold it to so you can get what you see, what you vision as success and what you want to experience. So it's going to happen. We're all changing. So it's going to happen. And to attack it on both fronts, because I know I do a lot of leadership discussions, keynotes, workshops with organizations, and they sometimes tend to compartmentalize the type of leadership you need for professional leadership. And then separately, we talk about personal leadership. But it really, in personal development, it really is intertwined because we are one person. You know what I mean? It
Right.
really is intertwined. intertwined. So what you may be struggling with at home, that's my dog. I got a huge dog who's sick. What you may be struggling with at home may also carry over to work, and vice versa. What you're struggling with at work may also carry over at home. So you have to attack it like on both fronts.
Yeah, and I think that, especially with me, it was my development in my personal that even increased my effectiveness in my professional, and so as I began to learn more about myself and to discover even some of my gifts that I necessarily hadn't really even paid attention to, that's what really pushed me even into what I'm doing now with the public speaking and with the podcast and all of that came out of me beginning to know myself and know my gifts, because growing up really, and still some to this day, I'm a shy person, right?
Mm,
So if you meet me in person, initially it'll be kind of uncomfortable for me for us to start a conversation. Now once the conversation gets started, then of course then I just start talking, and then it's over. But but
right.
even with that, to get to the point that not only being comfortable with meeting new people, especially like the podcast, I'm always meeting new people, and so getting comfortable with meeting new people, and then realizing not only am I comfortable with meeting new people, but I'm comfortable with talking in front of people. Because as we know, public speaking is like one of the highest fears of people in the world. But yet I'm probably more comfortable on the stage than I am in a room. You know what I'm saying? But that all that came from me really recognizing, my own strengths and weaknesses as I was doing my own work, and my own personal development. And I think that, even when we're looking at ourselves or we're looking at whatever the situation that's in front of us, a lot of it, our problems and our answers and our solutions comes from how we are viewing the problem. Or I won't even say the problem, I'll say the situation, because every situation is not even a problem. Sometimes we make it a problem
Right.
because of the viewpoint that we're looking at it from. So in your own words, how essential is it, to, when we're dealing with adversity, to really comprehend that the way that we're looking at it and our perspective of it may be the reason why we're having trouble with it.
Right. It's so important because perspective is everything. And I'll like give you a story on that I think kind of illustrates my point. There was a point in time where when I first started as a prosecutor, and mind you, I went through law school, and I went through law school on the dean's list and had academic awards and stuff. And I had that, with two children on public assistance, fighting homelessness, and all this other stuff going on.
Mm.
So once I became an attorney, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. If I made it through that, then I should be ready for this profession. Like I've paid my dues almost in a way. But when I started as a prosecutor, I came in the door for, and these were very low level, like misdemeanor cases, but I was getting not guilty after not guilty after not guilty. So acquittal after acquittal after acquittal. And before, some people, when they hear that, they start to cheer, but you got to remember, I was a prosecutor. So I was supposed
Right.
to be getting convictions after convictions, not all these not guilties. And I had to take a step back and assess what I had going on, because it was really a perspective thing. And I made sure that the cases that I were taking, that I believed in them, that the evidence supported it, that I had did everything I could. And they were early on in my career, like I said, very low level type of cases, but there was still something that wasn't connecting. So I decided that I needed to take this trial advocacy class for prosecutors. And I was like, because I didn't understand what was going on. And mind you, being probably at that time one of maybe three Black prosecutors in the office, I felt a little extra scrutiny, even if it was self-imposed. I felt that. So I was
Mhm.
like, let me take this trial advocacy class and see. It was offered by an association that trains prosecutors. So I go to take to my office, and I ask to register for the class because it has a registration fee of like $500, and hotel, and they do the per diem for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, travel, all that. And during that time, we had no money in our office for training, and I was really unable to pay for it because, like I said, I had two small children. I was a single parent. I had just gotten off welfare, so I had no money at all. It was very difficult. And to make it worse, they put the class in the month of December, and I'm like, that is Christmas time. I don't know why they would have offered this class in the month of December, but I knew how important it was to my professional development to take the class. So I said, you know what, we'll figure it out. So I took the class and I paid for it personally. Took it on my days off. I had to take vacation time for it because I couldn't submit. And me and both my kids and our old dog drove up to where the class was being offered in Southern California, which was a few hours away. And it was being offered at this big, like, very nice, like 4 or 5 star hotel or whatever. And they would come down and train in the conference room. But because I was paying for it, me and my kids were in like the little Motel 6 that was like 10 minutes away up the
I
street.
know that's right.
Like snacks that I had already bought because I didn't get a per diem. And, you know, my kids were older, like middle school and junior high at that time. So both, they stayed in the room while I went to the class, and then I would come back. And I learned so much from that class. It was crazy. So I learned so much from the class, and you know, I was keyed into every word because I'm paying for it. So I was like, I'm gonna get what I came for this class. So I did all that, but I do remember, just as a side note, when people first came down and we had like the little free lunch that came with the training, and they were like, just like going on and on about how comfortable the bed was, and they've never felt a comforter that fluffy. And I'm sitting there literally hoping, like, I hope I don't have bed bugs. So when I came into that Motel 6, we had to pull the covers back and, you know, I had to put the additional lock on the door. And I'm like, I hope none of these people ask me what I think about the comforter because I have no clue. And I don't want to talk about the comforter where we're staying at. So I thought that was funny. But I went on with the class and I was just really engaged and did everything. Um, and I came back to work and things changed because I realized where the disconnection was and what I was doing. I was really trying to prove what happened in the police report as opposed to what happened. So I realized I wasn't painting a clear picture for a jury. So that helped me a whole bunch. But when I came back, one of the administrators there who did that training contacted my office unbeknownst to me and told them that they thought that I was an excellent student. And my office was like, we told her she couldn't go to that class. What do you mean? So they called me and they said, did you attend that training? And I was like, oh yeah, I took it on my days off because I needed the training. And one thing that was very a good way they handled it was they reimbursed me retroactively for all the expenses for the training. So that was a big plus. But secondarily, and here where it comes to the perspective part, for years, I would think of that story and it would be something that made me think like, woe is me. I remember when I had to go to that Motel 6 while everybody else was at the nice hotel, and it was more a story of adversity.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until I thought about it with a different perspective and I realized that, like, honestly, I don't know if I can cuss on here, but that was pretty, bad. That was pretty fierce, if you want to use that term,
Mm-hmm.
for me to gather up my kids, take that training, and pay for it out of my own pocket when I literally had nothing. And it was a perspective in how I saw my own actions. One where I was really concentrating on the lack of all the things that I didn't have, as opposed to concentrating on like the positives of all the things that I did, even though I didn't have. So it's that type of perspective switch that you can make that really has you focus on what's going to be the solution and not so much focused on what are the things that are causing the problem.
Yeah, and I'm listening to the story, and even one of the things that I'm picking up on it is that perspective of how much do you want it, right? And which is something I talk to people about all the time on especially talking to the younger kids and high school, and that is how much do you want it? Like, you really have to want it. And if there's whatever this goal is and it's accomplishment that you're wanting or saying that you're wanting, there's going to be an amount and a level of sacrifice that is demanded for you to achieve it. And when you stand for to go forth with that sacrifice, is really going to determine how much you really want it. Do you want it enough just that you're saying you want it, or is it something that you really want? And that's what happened with you making that sacrifice. Like, okay, I need this training, so not only am I going to go, but I'm gonna pack my kids up and I'm gonna drive, and I'm gonna pay for it out of my own pocket, and so those are those things that, talking about perspective, like how do you look at it? You can either look at it and say, oh, I don't have it and I can't afford it, and so I guess it's not, meant to happen, or it's meant to happen because I'm gonna make it happen. And so that's the kind of the mindset that we need as a people, especially with going for our goals, going for the achievements that we have that means so much to us personally. It's like
Absolutely.
everything. I heard someone say, whenever you speak something out loud, that automatically gives the universe permission to test it. Like anytime you say, oh, I want this, I want to achieve this, you automatically give the universe the permission to test how much you really want it. And so it's like some things, if you keep it in, sometimes you're safe because it's like, okay, I didn't speak it, so you can kind of hide
Right.
behind it, whatever. But once you speak it out loud and say, you know what, I think I want to go for this job, I think I want to go for this degree, I think I want to go for this, whatever this achievement is, that automatically sparks in the universe where it's like, oh, do you really? Well, we're gonna see how much you really want it. And
Right.
you have to be in tune with yourself to really understand, like, yeah, if this thing is what I really want and I really desire it, then I have to be willing to make the sacrifices. I have to be willing to do the extra work, the behind the scenes, the things that other people may not have had to do. Then I still will have to put in that same thing, that same pressure, that same extra work in order to achieve it. And that kind of goes into one of the things that you said a few minutes ago when you were talking about you mentioned discipline. I think that's one things you missed when you were talking about the lead. First of all, let me say I love that because I'm a person that loves acronyms, right? So I get acronyms for everything. So I love that. But one of the things you mentioned about is discipline, right? And discipline is not like an on and off switch. Like it's something you got to constantly work at and endure in order to get that goal that you're looking for in the end. And so I know one of your perspectives is staying committed to the process, because as your process begins to go through and you're faced with those same ups and downs, then that's where that discipline kicks in at. So can you tell us a little bit more about even that mindset? Just like, what comes, what they like used to say, hell and hot water, you got to stick through it and you got to be committed to that process. So tell us even a little bit about the mindset that even goes into being able to stay committed to the process no matter what.
Oh, absolutely. So with discipline, I always found that one of the things that you have to like switch your mindset to is the belief that whatever this thing is that you're working, that it'll come to be. Right. So maybe not so specifically on like a particular goal, but whatever you're doing. And sometimes we don't know what we're doing. Because I can tell you there's a lot of times where I went into a lot of rooms and a lot of spaces and I didn't know how it was going to come out, but I knew that what my next best step was going to be. So I would take that. And I knew what the certain things that I committed to were going to be. So I knew, like, I had, if it was a routine, if it was making sure that I am covering this much material, and really tackling the things that don't give me immediate gratification, but knowing in the long term that I'm going to get that success. I'm going to get like a deeper joy from it, right? And that takes so much emotional maturity because it's so easy right now to get caught up in the immediate gratification. Even if it's just on your phone, whatever it is, it's so easy. And not that anybody has to be 100% perfect because we're human and we all fail and we have different avenues. You could be kicking it, you could be kicking butt professionally, but have some stuff going on personally that you gotta clear up. The key is though that your mindset is that you're gonna work to elevate every area of your life and do it consistently, even in the face of when it's uncomfortable and inconvenient. So just knowing that it means something and that you might not, like, it's a seed, you might not get the fruit immediately, but it's coming.
Yeah, and it's one of those things when we even you just mentioned the seed that, and also going back to perspective is kind of the same thing when you mention seeds. But if you think about a seed when you plant it, to plant something and bury something, it's the same process, right? You got to dig the hole, you put it in, you cover it with dirt, and both. But the difference is one is dead and one is full with expectation and expecting something to come from it. From a situation that is considered to be dead, you don't expect nothing out of it. So even though you're whether you're being buried or planted, it's the same process. But if you're planted, you're expecting and you have the mindset and the will set to continue to carry that process through until you break through from that little seedling, to break through the ground as a flower. And so it's just that difference in perspective of really being able to know that, and again, like you said, that whatever it is that I'm focusing on, whatever it is that I'm desiring, there's something behind it and it's going to work out. It's going to come and it's going to be worth it, in the end. I think that's a lot of, sometimes we miss that, especially with in this day and time with the instant gratification. Like you said, nobody wants to delay gratification. Nobody wants to put the work in first, and that's something that I have to talk with the high school kids about so much. I remember my daughter recently graduated from high school, maybe like 2 years ago. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. But I remember right after she graduated, later on that summer, I'm having a conversation with her, and she's like, "Well, Dad, I don't have a car yet, and I don't have a job yet, and I don't have this yet." And I'm like, "Whoa, you just graduated like less than 2 months ago. You were still in high school. Like, take your time." I said, "I'm not pushing you out to do anything. You're going to have a learning curve. You're going to have time to begin to get these things and accomplish these things, but don't get so caught up on what you see in the media on your phone that these people are portraying these lifestyles like they've accomplished this, even in your age group, where they're like, oh well, I have a car, I have this and that. Who knows how or if those things even belong to them? Like, you're looking at a false narrative and then you're comparing your reality with someone else's false reality that they're portraying. And like, no, you can't do that. So you got to take the time to really look at what's in front of you and take your time. You delay some of these things that you're thinking you should have right away. Delay, put the work in now, and over time you will achieve them. But you can't expect to have it all right now just because it looks like everybody else is getting it right now, which definitely is not the case, because I'm 48 years old and I ain't got nothing fast. Right?
Right.
Nothing came fast but some trouble. So but anything that I wanted to achieve, I've had to consistently work at it. And I think sometimes our not even, I can't even say the younger generation, definitely the younger generation more so now, because we're in a quick time where everything is quick and instant and microwave. But even us as adults, some of us still have that same hard time being able to see the difference between the truth and the untruth, and knowing where you stand, and not necessarily comparing yourself to someone else's portrayal of their lives, because a lot of times it's not even the truth. So
and I want to link that though, because what you said was so important and it's so linked to sex trafficking. I know we had talked about it in the beginning, but that's so linked to sex trafficking on a couple different ways. One is economic desperation. When somebody is economically oppressed and they are desperate, makes them way more vulnerable to exploitation. So just ingesting all of these false narratives, exactly as you called it, all these false narratives have someone maybe feeling more and more desperate because they're feeling like they are more and more further behind than the rest of everybody, and they start becoming more vulnerable to exploitation. So that's one of the things that I think people don't talk about enough. A lot of times people talk about generational wealth and growing wealth and doing all that, which is incredibly wonderful. But generational, like that economic desperation, if that is like a generational thing in the house, it really opens up a lot of opportunities for exploitation. And then the second thing is that false narrative that you talked about. I know for a fact that as far when it comes to exploiters and traffickers, one of the things that they do is make sure they use social media as a tool to work almost as like marketing, as advertisement, to say that this is some kind of glamorous lifestyle to groom and recruit, and then when in reality it's a whole different thing. So while the average post might not be from an exploiter or a trafficker, but just the notion that it's just marketing and it's meant to send that false message really can harmfully affect some of the people who receive it, especially if they're economically desperate or if they have any of the other vulnerabilities that make them more, more likely to be exploited.
Wow, wow. I'm glad that you were able to connect that. Thank you for that eye opening advice, and just to be able to, because I often think about that, because we're on our phones so much now, and those false narratives can open us up to all kinds of things that we don't even recognize, especially our children. And I'm just say this quick story before we go. I know recently I was listening to another podcast, and a young lady was on there, and she was kind of giving her story, how she got caught into sex trafficking herself. And one of the things was she connected with this guy who was a rich guy, had money, and took her on these lavish vacations and everything. And when she kind of got to the point where she was like, all right, I'm tired of this lifestyle, I'm ready to go home, he said, you can't go because you're a gift for my wife. And she said, what? He's like, no, you're a gift for my wife. So his wife had wanted to start having threesomes. And so he went, she actually said the lady chose her. She seen her somewhere and chose her. And he pursued her as if he wanted to date her till he got her there. And then was like, okay, this is why you're here. You're basically a sex object for my wife. And you can't leave until she's done with you, you know. But the whole presentation was his money, his lifestyle, and buying you these things. And like you said, in her case, she was desperate, and he was able to provide all these things in his lifestyle that she wasn't used to, only to draw her in and get her caught in this predicament that she ended up having to fight her way out of. So I'm glad that you were able to point that out and make that connection. So I'm really excited. I thank you so very much for being on. Definitely love this conversation. I want you to leave us with a word of advice, inspiration, however you feel, something that the listeners can take with them, besides that nugget that you just dropped, but something that the listeners can take with them even after listening to this podcast. And then also your social media handles, where you can be found and things like that, however you feel. So I want you to have the last word. So I'll give you a second to think about that. While you're thinking about that, to my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal Till with E. James podcast. Make sure you guys are checking us out on our website. So if you go to our main website, which is dealhealfulfill.org, you'll find out more information about me as a person and as the organization, and what you need to do to have me even come out to head a workshop or as to be a speaker. You also find more information about the podcast. There's 2 podcasts that's up and running right now. Again, the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, as well as the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. And also make sure that you guys are checking us out with our other website, the Deal to Heal tees, which are inspirational t-shirt line. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. And we wish to inspire you all day. So make sure you guys go to healtees.com, deal2healtees.com, and find your inspirational tea. And also, last but not least, our ebooks. Go to ebooksbyejames.com. That's ebooksbyejames.com. And you guys can purchase the ebooks. We have male mentoring ebook on there called From Males to Men. That is very informative. Also, we have one ebook that I'm very proud of that I talk about a lot, which is the Core 4, which is the core 4 values that every daughter should get from her father. Make sure you guys go there. Again, that's ebooksbyejames.com. There are also other ebooks there. You guys just check them out there. last but not least, well, not last but not least, but one of the things that I've been blessed to be a part of is an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And one of the things that we do, we have free virtual workshops every quarter of the year talking about forgiveness, what it is, what it's not, who is it for, forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, everything forgiveness. We talk about it and we discuss it. So you guys can go to forgivenessmission.com or just go to Eventbrite for forgiveness workshop and look it up, and you will be able to find our forgivenessmission.com free virtual workshops. So whenever you're listening to this podcast, either one just ended or there's one coming up, so you can go there and register for the workshop. And again, it's 100% free, but the knowledge is valuable. So make sure you guys go check that out. And now, last but not least, I told you guys that I would tell you how you can win $100 from the podcast. You can win $100 from the podcast by entering our super subscriber contest. So first, you must subscribe to our YouTube channel, to our Facebook page, and to our podcast on Spotify. After you've done those three things, you want to text the word WIN, W-I-N, to the number 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730 to qualify to win $100. The contest is ongoing and is random. So once you're in, you can always win. You don't never have to re-up again. So not only can you win, but when you share it with someone else, share the podcast with someone else, they have the chance to win $100 also. And make sure when you text the word WIN, W-I-N, to the number 866-326-0730, you also leave your contact information so we can contact you if you are our $100 winner. A lot of people are texting the word WIN, but then they don't tell us who they are, so we can't even call you back to let you know that you won. So make sure that you leave your contact information so we can notify you if you are our next $100 winner. Miss Anderson, thank you so very much for being on, for being a guest and sharing with us your story and your expertise. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure that my listeners do too. I want you to have the last word, so the floor is yours.
Thank you. I guess my last word would be, and I'm gonna focus it on probably on those who are struggling with some adverse situation, would be to remember that whatever that situation is, just like the saying goes, that too shall pass. And most importantly, to make sure you make the distinction between separating you, who you are, your identity, from that situation. So work to identify problems, but don't become the problem, right? So don't take that on, because when you do, then you're at a no-win situation. When you realize that it's something external and something that you can figure out, then you know that you have a solution to get you to your next level. So really work hard at identifying all of the things that affect you in your life, but don't identify with those things, right? So I think that would be my last word, because it's so difficult when we have so much stuff, especially systemic stuff in our face when it comes to some of the things that we see that are legitimate, but that is not your end. Like, you are not whatever those conditions are.
All right. Do you want to share any of your social media handles?
Sure. I am Miiko Anderson pretty much everywhere. So Miiko Anderson on Instagram, Miiko Anderson on LinkedIn, Miiko Anderson on Facebook. Nothing fancy. It's just Miiko Anderson all across all platforms.
All right.
Oh, and I also want to let people know that I am wearing this orange blazer. When we're recording this is during Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. So orange is the color for that. So if you want to connect with me on receiving like training for that, I do that even if you have zero budget. So make sure you connect with me on any of those platforms, and I'll try to get something up for you.
All right. Thank you so very much for your wisdom and expertise. We can't end it any better than that. To my listeners, once again, thank you guys for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where our mission is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with their problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill their purpose. Until next time, you guys be blessed. Hey guys, I know you're enjoying the podcast. However, don't forget to join our text line at 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730 in order to receive text messages with new events and things that is going on and new episodes as they release. All right, see you in a minute. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.